I'm back for a very short lesson just to highlight the questions that can be framed from this chapter to build a fire by Jack London. And before I move on to the questions, please do see the movie Togo. It's so heartwarming, and it will definitely please your heart, and it'll encourage you then to read the story to build a fire, because you all end up counting the number of pages and you see the length and you don't get too encouraged. So just to encourage you to read the story, I want you to see Togo. Right. So we move to the first question, which was in the 2019 board paper. If you see it, this chapter lends itself to the three-part question. So the first one is, describe the man's attempt. Sorry, where is this blue line coming from? Yeah, describe the man's repeated attempts to keep himself warm. Remember what I told you, the three attempts. The first attempt for the fire is on page 41, successful attempt. The second attempt on page 42, which was not successful, and the third attempt on page 45, again unsuccessful, which actually leads on to his ultimately dying. Yes, so very detailing, very factual. You cannot go wrong with this answer. Question 2, contrast the attitude of the man and the dog towards the weather. So, this entire thing, if you revisit the first lesson, you will find the contrast between instinct and imagination and reality and reasoning. That is what the contrast is, and how the man is so full of himself and he's impervious to the weather. He doesn't heed the advice of the old man at the Sulphur Creek, and while the dog is sensing the cold and feels the danger, the man does not worry about it at all. That is the main difference, because at the end the dog survives, the man doesn't. Right? It's a 6-mark question. And the third part is, what does the man finally learn from his experience? So there's those 3 points that each time he's reminiscing, when he's gradually moving into a sense of acceptance of his death, he's reminiscing of what the old man at the Sulphur Creek said and how true it was. Do not travel alone. Do not underestimate the weather ever, and do not be falsely proud of your sense of the human achievement and the human uh, capability to withstand what nature has in store for you. And every one of you in this century, in this decade, will never forget that nature cannot be taken for granted. Yes, what is there in nature is something that perhaps we do not have an answer to. Right. So that's it. Move to second question. Again, 3 parts. Bring out the following elements in Jack London's story to build a fire. The unfriendly landscape with an emphasis on the weather conditions. So the entire first part, the weather, the landscape, the setting, the Yukon River, Henderson Creek, the different paths that is described of the Yukon Trail, and then the Canadian part of it, the Chilkoot Pass, Daya, the saltwater, St. Michael's, Bering Sea, entire setting, and then the climatic conditions. But when you're giving examples of the climate, do give relevant quotes from the story, which will enhance your answer. Second, the attempts made by the man to build a fire. This will oft be repeated. Whatever question you get, the attempt, because it is to build a fire. That's how it lends itself to the title, because he was unsuccessful in building a fire that he did not survive. Right? First successful, then the next one successful attempts. 6 marks for that, right? Very clear. Again, narrative, you can't go wrong with this. And the third is the prominent characteristics of the man and the dog, with your opinion as to who lives a more indelible mark in your mind and why. So I want you to write about the prominent characteristics of the man and the dog, and I want your opinion as to who leaves a more indelible mark in your mind and why. Why the man? Why the dog? Some of you might say both. Don't sit on the fence, choose. When you're writing the characters, make it important. You either can you either the weakness of the man, which will help you to understand your weakness, could leave an indelible mark, or some of you who believe that who have accepted your weakness will believe in the greatness of the dog, and how we underestimate the power of animals. Those who have pets might go for the dog. I'm just These are just assumptions. Please, please, please. You might vary. So, but that's an 8 mark. So the first part is definitely the characteristics of the dog. You know how we break it up into eight. The characteristics of the dog would be definitely 2 marks. Characteristics of the man would be 2 marks. Your opinion about what and why would be 4 marks. Any opinionated question, your opinion carries the maximum marks. Correct? All right. Then we move on to the next. Critically analyze the story To Build a Fire by Jack London as man's effort to survive in the harsh conditions of Alaska. So you're talking about the setting, you're talking about, actually I'm calling it Alaska because that's a part of Canada that is now moving into the Alaskan Peninsula. So that's why, yeah. Don't let's nitpick about the geography of it, but then Canadian Trail now moving into the Alaskan weather conditions, harsh conditions. So you're talking of the setting, then you're moving to the weather conditions, and then man's the three efforts to build a fire, and also the entire characteristic of the man, of how he invited death because he did not follow some of the cardinal principles that he was told to follow, right, by the old man at the Sulphur Creek and what he had learned. Because he was a, if you remember what I told you first, he was a Chechequa, a newcomer. So a newcomer with that immense ego, yes, uh, underestimated uh, the harshness, unforgiving nature, how unforgiving nature can be. One more question. Common sense is more important than imagination if what one wants to survive in extreme conditions of nature. It's just a statement. How would you justify this statement in light of Jack London's story To Build a Fire? So then the contrast between dog and man, intellect, reasoning versus imagination and instinct. Remember that. So the contrast and what happens in the end, how the man stays with the, how the dog stays with the man because he needs warmth. Remember when I told you about the need of the dog for fire and warmth is when he is in the company of men, right? So the red flower, yes, when we are talking about, so that is what man is capable of, straight from Mowgli, yes, the red flower. So again the contrast between man and dog, yes, you of course can revisit a bit of Rudyard Kipling here, Jack London, Rudyard Kipling, very very similar strand of the story, yes. And keep that in mind. And of course, the extreme conditions of nature. We come back to his attempts to build a fire. Again, the two failed attempts which finally lead to his demise. Right. So I those are the only 4 questions that I worked on. So I'm sure you would enjoy this narrative. I tell you, it's a long story, but the answers, the questions will be very direct, very narrative. You cannot go wrong. You're going to score very highly. Yes, so I recommend this chapter because you will definitely score very highly in this. So it's a short chapter, and I feel wonderful to have now completed the section of the prose as well. So we finish Echoes today, and from next week, the week beginning 15th of June, I start off with, as all of you have requested, not all of you, most of you have requested, I begin with The Tempest, right? We'll do it differently. Till then, enjoy your weekend and take care, stay safe, watch some good movies. Begin with Togo. Bye.